Did any of you get a chance to watch the video? It came out in the last 10 days that Mama Dr. Jones did on home birth versus hospital birth.
Yeah, I thought it was okay. I wasn't a huge fan because I think she missed some really good opportunities to talk about some stuff.
Oh, I'm so curious. I don't want to derail it. Can we talk about it for a minute, though? Because I do think...
No, I think we should talk about it because I started to watch it because actually very strange, but when you pull up our videos and you go under, you can look and see what kind of where our videos are falling. And we were in the same category as her. Actually, that's how I found out who she was. I never heard of her before, but she kept popping up and I was like, who the heck is this? And then my husband was like, hey, she's doing one on home birth. And I was like, really? And when she went to do it, I did watch it. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. Maybe this is just I'm like the old school, I'm free. Okay. I like my videos to be free. I don't want anybody to pay for any of this stuff. So I made it to her first ad. And then I was like, I'm not watching this crap anymore. I'm old school Napster. Okay. Where we were we download music for free because it's free. We can go to the park and listen to music. And so when they started charging us, I had a problem. So when I got to the first ad, I was like, oh, I'm done here. And I just shut it off. I was like, I'm done. I can't take it anymore.
She is highly, I did not know, and this is not to plug myself. I was just surprised. So I don't know if you guys in Madison, you probably don't know this because this was actually back in early 2019, end of 2018, maybe. I wrote this article on my blog, my personal blog about late midwifery. And I called it Fake Midwives, Overstepping Doulas, and I can't remember the third thing I put in there. It was one that I was just kind of fed up. It was one of my more call out ones. Normally and it was a little bit more aggressive than I normally am. So this actually it does come full circle because she actually shared that. And I had no idea really who she was at that time, but she shared it. I think she might have grabbed it from Dr. Amy's site or something. And all of a sudden I had all of this traffic on my site so much it crashed my site because I'm normally don't have that amount. So I realized that she had 1 million followers or something like that. So she does, I say that, Danielle, because that's why she's got ads and all of that. She is a highly followed doctor. That was a very aggressive stance I took when I wrote that. And she private, not only did she reshare it, she private messaged me and was like, I've been trying to say this is great. I feel this, but I feel when she made this home birth video, she was very cautious about the line she rode with it. She was very much, which I do agree with. At the end of the day, women make whatever choices they want to make. It's the idea that there's not a lot of, truly informed consent that goes into it because of how women are, and not just women, whole families that are going to be birthing families are brainwashed into thinking it's a safer option. But I felt like she had a lot of really good points. I did like the fact that she kind of talked about how, if people were on the up and up, they would really want to have regulatory systems in place. They would want to be held to a higher standard. So she finds it interesting that they don't. So I appreciated that part of it. And I did think that it had really good breakdowns of the different credentialing, not too in-depth, but a fair amount. It was pretty informative, the layout of it. But she did seem to kind of really, I don't know, almost, it felt like she romanticized midwifery a little more than.
I would agree with that.
Huh?
I would agree with that.
Which was, like I said, she was when I wrote that first one, she was very much like, I agree with you on this, and had reshared it to her stories and stuff. And that's what got me all sorts of traffic. But she is very, she was very in agreement with my very firm stance when I wrote that. So I did feel a different vibe. But what did you get? Marissa, we were just talking about, I don't know if you had the opportunity, but Mama Dr. Jones this past 10 days or so did a home birth versus hospital birth video. So we're just kind of talking about our thoughts on that because I think we all at least saw snippets of it, just happened to come up.
So
I did watch that.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ange. I was going to say the problem with how her take on that came off to other people, when I was reading the comments, people still had an idea that a freestanding birth center was the perfect medium and that it was safe. And
Those people are all reading Mama Natural because and they're taking the Mama Natural birth course. And I know for a fact because the midwife who owns the facility my son died in is the doula RN who's in the Mama Natural videos. And
okay.
all she talks about is how the safest statistical place to give birth in the US is in a freestanding birth center.
But
And
that's easy to misunderstand. Like, that's very misinformed places right there. You have home birth and you have a hospital, and we always hear about those two. We always hear about how separate they are. And you hear people saying, I would never have a home birth, never, ever, ever. I need people around me. I need whatever. But then you think in America, because we really not very informed, there's a medium. And you're like, oh, it's a birth center. So you think it's the happy place between having individual care and yet medical care, whatever. But if a doctor is not actively on duty over in the place, walking around, checking the moms, checking the charts, checking everything out, it is still a glorified home birth. And it's just a misinformed piece of, like, nobody knows that. I didn't know. I looked for a birth center. I really thought that it was a medical building outside of a hospital that you would walk in and you'd have medical people around. And then as it turned out, my state didn't have them because my state didn't even make them legal here. I have 0 laws in Nevada for midwives, but my state wouldn't even make a birth center even legal here because they didn't want to deal with the liability issues of literally it's a home birth. Home birth, that's your choice, but birth center, that makes it go to another point. Is it accredited? Is it not accredited? They have to look at standards. They'd have to look at stuff, and people would actually have to do more work that the state doesn't want to deal with.
Yeah.
So I think that's just misinformation that people just don't understand. A birth center seems good. And yes, a lot of them are run by nurse midwives, but that doesn't mean that it is the safest option. And that pretty much drives me insane, especially hearing about New York and hearing about Florida. The birth centers are so dangerous. They're the same thing as what I had. It's exactly the same thing.
I believe that I know the study they're talking about. There was exactly one study, and they looked at certified freestanding birth centers only. And that, I don't know what fraction of out-of-hospital births that constitutes, but it's a minority. And they didn't count any birth centers that weren't certified, and it was only one study. So basically what they found is that for any state that has certified birth centers, they are quasi-safe.
If I'm not mistaken, in the entire state of New York, including Manhattan and all of the boroughs, Staten Island, Long Island, everything, if I'm not mistaken, at least as of a couple years ago, the only legal birth center in the state of New York was the Birth Center of Buffalo, which is the one that the Birth and Betrayal experience came out of. So
Yes, I believe you're right, Madison.
anywhere in New York State, if you're having a birth in a birth center, it's not a legal birth center. It's no more than birthing at home, besides you didn't do it in your own home. This is especially important for people who watch the Mama Natural videos, because the woman in those videos who is telling you this information, she owns a birth house. She does not have a birth center. She does not have any of the accreditations or the things that are necessary for her to be able to even uphold the statistics that she is talking about in those videos. Everything is wrought with misrepresentation. But about the Mama Dr. Jones videos, now as somebody who is much newer to all of this, I'm only a year off of it. My son's birthday would have been on the 24th. So I'm still grappling with finding the balance of who I was and who I am now. And I still am very empathetic, and I listen to people when they talk. And I know that there are still a lot of people out there who want the experience of home birth, despite what happened to Danielle and despite what happened to me. The thing I really appreciated about the Mama Dr. Jones video is that she does not leave room for midwives to say that she is against them. Midwives can't use her video to say, see, she's just anti-us. You can't listen to her because her entire video is wrought with doubt. It is making you mistrust every decision that you're making because she doesn't have faith in us and she doesn't want you to have faith in yourself, which is what most midwives do when they have somebody who is making these decisions. I appreciated that this is a video I can send to people who ask me about home birth, where I know that they're not going to feel alienated or pushed into a corner. So I do think it's not as informative as it should be. It definitely does romanticize midwifery a lot, but she's also very clear that CNMs in a hospital are your best way to go, which I think is important because alienation is the game that midwives play. It's an abuse cycle. They want to separate you from those who worry about you and are concerned about you. So they use any opening that they can to drive fissures between you and those who want to care about you.
See, I didn't get through the whole video, so I don't even know if I can give too much of an opinion about it. I do think anything that brings up the differences, that actually brings up home birth and brings up all that stuff, I think it's good. It's always good to create more awareness. And maybe this will be kind of the start of more awareness coming out, more stuff coming out, which is needed because there's just not enough. We only see one side and we don't see the other side. So I'll take anything that starts leading in the direction of change and improvements and going that way, you know? So if that's what it takes, I mean, I didn't finish it. I think my husband finished it and he said, it wasn't bad. That was what, that's what he said. He was like, it wasn't bad. He's like, I think there's some stuff that she could have included in there. And I think she could have, you know, whatever. And he's like, but it wasn't like, he's like, it was okay in the way of whatever that it is, a doctor talking about it. And she had like the statistical little things coming up and whatever. He's like, yeah, it fit for what she was doing, I think. And hopefully somebody got something out of it, but you know.
Yeah, I think she included the 2/3 of babies who died at home birth who had been saved in the hospital, which is a good statistic. What irked me is she talked up midwives and she's like, midwives are good. Midwives are an essential part of healthcare. Other countries use them, you know, in a very different way than we do. But the one thing that bugged me is the whole, we need to bring the midwives into the fold. And yes, it would be great to have midwives as an integrated part of the medical profession and our health infrastructure, but they don't want to, is the real problem. And so it's kind of like, I hate that part where the midwives constantly say, well, the doctors don't like us and the hospitals hate us, and they hate you too because you're having a home birth. And we just want to be treated with respect. And it's like, there's a reason you're not getting any respect. And I hate to say it, it's because you're endangering women and their babies, or pregnant people and their babies, sorry. And it's like, if you would just call a doctor, transfer on time, just do those things you need to do. Scope of practice, standards of care. I would say, yes, you can be part of the infrastructure. If you are not going to do those things, you will never be part of the infrastructure, ever. And unfortunately, the women who trust them don't realize that this is the basic conflict.
But there is already a way for someone to become a midwife and to be part of the system. If they're already choosing not to go through that route, you have to wonder, you know, what other things are they not going to want to conform to? Because to some extent, you have to conform to what you're trying to join.
Yeah. If
That's
this
where
is
the
your
end
career
goal comes
choice.
into play.
Yeah.
It's about, if your goal is not overall healthy people, then you're not going to fit in with a hospital setting, and you're not going to have positive relationships with your colleagues especially when, even in a hospital setting, if a midwife messes up, a doctor has to get involved. And then that doctor becomes also liable for the outcome of what that midwife has done. And this is happening regardless, because doctors are liable for the mistakes of home birth midwives when the doctors take on those transfers. But that's why the doctors don't want them in the hospitals. If they're not an easy to work with midwife, they've earned their reputation. It's not something, doctors don't want to make enemies of their colleagues. I'm sure doctors love when highly qualified and attentive midwives come into their hospitals where it's like, okay, now I just get to oversee the work that you're doing and everybody benefits. But if that midwife is consistently proving that she's going to take chances and risks that are irresponsible to take, the doctor has no other choice. The hospital has no other choice. They have investors. They have a bottom line to meet, which is a really unfortunate way to put it. They have insurance companies that determine risk factors of things and what they will allow. And if your hospital isn't allowing something, it's because they have a history of that thing not being okay.
I would like to point out that one of the things that hospital, now that there's this push to essentially merge hospitals into big conglomerations, is that two things are happening. One of them is areas that already have a shortage of medical care are having hospitals shut down on them, the whole hospital. And then the other thing that is happening, and this is because maternity care is so high risk and therefore expensive in a variety of ways, they are also shutting down maternity units, labor and delivery in hospitals. So anyone who sits there and thinks that telling people to go in pushing for VBACs in order to avoid a second C-section or other risky strategies and dumps on these hospitals is essentially pushing those hospitals closer and closer to actually removing either the hospital or the L&D unit itself. I mean, bills have to be paid.